Hello, I'm so glad you could join me for this presentation today on learning a second language and the importance of having a language-rich classroom, including the language reading connection and explicitly teaching language functions. My focus is going to be primary students up to grade 3, since that's my area of experience. There are many similarities and differences between learning one's first language as a toddler, which is called L1, and a second language called L2 later in life. Learning an L1 is intrinsic and often not even part of our memories. For most, it's not difficult and happens naturally. Learning an L2, however, takes a lot more effort. Here's a comparison of the two. As you can see, many factors are involved in learning success, including input, exposure, motivation, and self-esteem. Here are some more of the comparisons between L1 and L2. As you can see, there are some similarities like the importance of making mistakes, the need for patterning, and the importance of learning within the zone of proximal development, which means that both L1 and L2 learners need help reaching to learn more difficult concepts and skills. The difference between learning L1 and L2 are important for our educators to know because many of our students are building their L2 knowledge. We need to create context and positive input for them to learn well. Language and reading development work together as a team. In Chapter 19 of Handbook of Reading, Perla B. Gamez says, when language is richly spoken in the classroom, ELL students develop stronger language skills more quickly. This statement emphasizes the importance of having a classroom with deep dialogue and language to help build essential language skills. Adding rich discussion and language in a primary class is important for reading growth. Here are some things I've done with my classes in the past. First, I chose read aloud books that were detailed and full of great describing words. I'd often introduce some of these vocabulary words to the class before reading the book, and we'd practice using the words in a sentence, or, if it was a verb, acting the words out. Then, when I read the book out loud, I'd ask students to listen for the words and give me a symbol, like a thumbs up, when they recognized the word. This way, ELL students were given the chance to hear the word multiple times and practice it both orally and through reading, as I demonstrated the word in a sentence. As Gomez describes, high-quality language promotes reading development. Another example is using small group instruction to drive discussions. I found a good way to encourage discussions is within reading groups. For ELL students who are building their language skills, using open-ended sentence starters to begin discussions, for example, would be a good way to practice language skills. Here are some examples of sentence starters that could enhance discussion within groups. As students are guided in their interaction with the text, their comprehension will grow as well. In this case, I would give an example using the sentence starter myself, and then I would have the students practice in their head and think about their answer first, and then I would have them share their answer and their sentence with a peer in that group. Building reading skills is essential in primary classes. A common struggle among primary teachers with ELL students is addressing those who can decode but struggle with comprehension. The reason for a student's struggle with decoding could be unique from student to student. This brings me to Scarborough's reading rope. As you can see a picture of it here, the diagram I chose is featured on reallyGreatReading.com. As you can see, this theory suggests that skilled reading is a combination of comprehension and word recognition, and each strand has its own strands of knowledge. When decoding is strong and reading comprehension is the struggle, a student may be having difficulty with one or more of the 5 aspects listed. Many ELL students, for example, struggle with background knowledge and/or vocabulary because they haven't yet built the skills to understand the concepts in the text. In this case, teachers need to teach students the background knowledge needed to understand. For example, if you're reading a book about children at their grandparents' cabin who find a duck sitting in a canoe shed, then many ELL students will need some pre-teaching on what a cabin and a canoe are and what their purpose is before reading the book. Addressing grammar in the classroom is also crucial. In What Teachers Need to Know About Language, Lily Fillmore and Catherine Snow discuss how ELL students need to learn more quickly than their monolingual peers. On page 36, they discuss how teachers need to explicitly teach grammar and vocabulary in their classes. I've already provided an example of how to do this for vocabulary with a read aloud book, but there are other options for teaching this as well. When teaching past and present, for example, creating a chart of words representing the past and the present, such as looked and look, or walked and walk, teachers can create visual cues for students to build on, while also showing patterning, like the ed on the end of a word like talked, walked, and printed, all showing that the ed is indicating past tense. Noticing other ways of writing past tense, such as ran and drew, could also be a good chance for discussion, as those words don't use ed, but they do coordinate with their present tense counterparts. Creating multiple chances for practice and adding visual reminders helps students remember their new skills. Many wonder about how to engage student learning most effectively. Lee Vygotsky developed a theory called the zone of proximal development. This theory surmises that learners can retain and absorb skills and knowledge that's still too difficult for them, as long as that knowledge isn't too far removed from their current abilities. With the help and guidance of others, new skills and knowledge can be built. This diagram I've used can be found in my references from Simply Psychology. Teachers need to remember that students can learn new concepts as long as we provide the explicit instruction, practice, and modeling needed for them to grow. Our classrooms need to be rich in language and opportunities for students to practice their skills. In A Functional Approach to Language, Beverly Derawenka discusses how teachers can use modeling, practice, and examples to teach students different genres of language and how to use them. On page 3 of this book, she states, a functional model of language can be drawn on whatever children are engaged in the construction of texts, and opportunities are created for explicit discussion of these texts. With the benefit of explicit instruction, students can work towards mastery of different genres. An example of this can be letter writing, which is one of the forms of communication listed in the curricular competencies for grades 2 and 3. To teach this, a teacher can first show examples of letters, as I'm displaying now. Moving ahead, the teacher can have students write letters together in groups of 2 or 3. Some students may need graphic organizers to be successful with this. Finally, the teacher can have students write their own letters after multiple exposures to and practice with the genre. This functional approach to grammar helps students have a deeper understanding of how grammar functions in authentic language use and communication, because it provides demonstrations and proper modeling techniques for different genres of writing. In grades 2 and 3, for example, students would have a chance to not just learn letter writing, but literary devices like similes, story writing, poems, and plays by receiving exposure and learning to create these many genres, they would be more prepared for the academic work required in older grades. What I've learned in this module will help me as I work with classes next year in my role of ELL teacher. My job is to support ELL students in the classroom by also supporting their teacher. I need to provide team teaching opportunities and linguistic support. I hope to be able to work with several teachers next year, demonstrating how to teach grammar in a functional way. I'll also have an opportunity to show how explicit teaching makes a difference for students who need modeling and practice in order to learn. In several classes, I'll even have the opportunity to teach lessons each week. When possible, I hope to use the functional approach to language as described by Beverly Derawanka to explicitly teach skills to students. I also hope to provide opportunities for small group instruction, providing support for building background knowledge and vocabulary.